The night they carried me out of the ring, I couldn't even hear the crowd anymore. Blood covered my face, my ribs were on fire, and somewhere in the noise, I heard laughter. My coach's laughter. The man I trusted with my life was standing with the people who bet against me. That's when I realized I was alone. I didn't just lose a fight. I lost everything, my faith, my team, my purpose. But somewhere on that cold floor, under the blinding lights, something inside me refused to die. That night, the world saw a broken fighter. What they didn't see was the monster being born. The air in the locker room was thick with the smell of sweat and blood. The echo of the crowd still burned in my ears, not the cheers but the laughter. You don't forget the sound of people laughing when you're lying on the floor gasping for air. I sat there staring at my gloves. They were soaked red. Not just from the fight, but from the part of me that still believed I had someone in my corner. My coach's words kept ringing in my head. "You're not ready, kid. You'll never be ready." He told me that right before the match. I thought he was testing me. Turns out he'd already given up on me. When I limped out of the arena that night, the rain was pouring. No ride. No team. No one waiting. Just me and the pain. I walked home through the dark, dragging my bag behind me, my breath sharp from every step. Every drop of rain felt like a reminder. You lost, you failed, you're nothing. But there's something strange about losing everything. It gives you the freedom to change. That night I made myself a promise. No more talking. No more trusting. If I was ever going to stand again, I'd do it alone. The next morning I woke up before the sun. My ribs screamed with every breath, but I still went outside. The world was quiet. No cameras, no coaches, no fake encouragement. Just me and the cold morning air. I started running. Every step hurt. Every breath burned. But I kept going. Not because I wanted revenge, but because I needed to feel something real again. Weeks passed. My body healed, but my mind stayed raw. Everywhere I went, I saw reminders, posters of fighters I used to spar with, smiling in their victories. Sometimes I'd walk past the gym window, see them training, and feel the sting in my chest. They didn't even look my way. I was invisible. So I built my own gym. Not with fancy equipment, not with mirrors or cameras, just a broken punching bag hanging from a rusted beam in an abandoned garage. No noise. No crowd. Just the sound of fists and breathing. That's when I found peace. There, in the silence, I learned how to listen, not to people but to pain. Pain became my trainer. Pain never lied to me. Pain didn't betray me. Months turned into years. While others talked, I worked. While they posted, I bled. And slowly the loser they forgot started to disappear. In his place, something colder, sharper, quieter was forming. I didn't tell anyone I was coming back. Didn't post a single thing. I wanted the first sound they heard from me to be my fists landing. One night, the gym owner, an old boxer named Ray, noticed me training after hours. He watched from the corner, smoking a cigarette, his eyes narrowing with every jab I threw. When I finally stopped, drenched in sweat, he said, "Kid, you hit like someone who's got a reason." I didn't answer. He smiled slightly. "Good. Keep it that way." That was the first time someone didn't pity me, they respected the silence. Days blended into nights. My body became harder. My focus sharper. The world forgot my name, but I didn't care. Because the next time I stepped into that ring, I wasn't fighting for approval. I wasn't fighting for applause. I was fighting for every night I slept on cold floors. For every person who laughed when I fell. For every "you're not enough" that burned in my memory. And deep inside, I knew something they didn't. The quiet ones, the ones who disappear. They don't come back to talk. They come back to finish what they started. That was the beginning of the end for the old me. The broken kid who needed a coach. The fighter who fought for attention. He died that night in the ring. What was left was something else. Something the crowd wouldn't see coming. They say time heals everything. That's a lie. Time doesn't heal, it only hides the scars under thicker skin. I learned that the hard way. After that night, I didn't talk to anyone. No messages. No calls. No apologies. I deleted every photo, every memory, every trace of who I was before. I didn't want to fix the old me. I wanted to bury him. At first, silence was torture. The nights were the worst, lying awake, hearing echoes of the crowd, flashes of that laughter in my head. Sleep didn't come easy. I'd wake up sweating, fists clenched, heart pounding like I was still fighting. But over time, the silence became something else. It became my teacher. It forced me to listen, not to the noise of the world but to the voice inside me that I'd ignored for too long. That voice didn't whisper comfort. It screamed truth. You quit too early. You trusted too fast. You fought for approval, not purpose. So I started training again, not for anyone, not for revenge, just to face that voice. The garage was my home now. The smell of rust and dust didn't bother me anymore. There was no music, no mirrors, no crowd, just the sound of my heartbeat echoing off the concrete walls. Every punch I threw had a memory behind it. Every drop of sweat carried a name, a face, a betrayal. At first, my body resisted. The pain was constant, knees screaming, ribs aching, lungs burning. But pain wasn't my enemy anymore. It was my proof that I was still alive. I changed everything. My diet, my routine, my mindset. I stopped training to look strong. I trained to be unbreakable. Morning runs before sunrise. Ice-cold showers until my skin burned. Hours of shadowboxing in the dark until I could fight blind. I didn't need a coach. Didn't need motivation. I had something stronger, purpose. Every time my legs trembled, I remembered the laughter. Every time I wanted to quit, I remembered my coach's words. You'll never be ready. He was right, I'd never be ready. Because readiness is a lie. You either do it or you don't. So I stopped waiting for the right moment. I started creating it. Months passed. I barely recognized myself. The mirror showed a face that didn't smile anymore, eyes that didn't blink when they saw pain. I wasn't trying to heal, I was transforming. But silence can be dangerous too. It starts to whisper doubts when you're weakest. One night I broke. Halfway through my workout, I fell to my knees. My hands were bleeding, my chest burning. I screamed, not from pain but from exhaustion. From the feeling that maybe everyone was right about me. Maybe I was just a broken fighter training for a dream that died long ago. I sat there, shaking, staring at the blood on the floor. And then I heard a voice, not in my head, not from someone else, but deep inside. Then die training. That was it. The switch flipped. If I was going to die, I'd die pushing forward. Not in defeat, but in discipline. So I stood back up. And I kept hitting. And hitting. Until the bag tore open. Until my hands went numb. Until the voice inside me went silent. Not because it gave up, but because it finally believed me. Discipline replaced emotion. I didn't care about motivation anymore. Motivation fades. Discipline doesn't. Every morning I woke up before the world did. When everyone else was sleeping, I was out there chasing ghosts. Running through empty streets, feeling the cold air tear through my lungs. There's something pure about pain when no one's watching. No applause. No validation. Just you and the grind. One evening Ray, the old gym owner, came by my garage. He watched me train for a while, saying nothing. When I finally stopped, he walked up and said, "You remind me of someone I used to know." I looked at him, waiting. He took a drag from his cigarette. That guy had nothing. No coach, no team, no sponsors. But you know what he had? What? I asked. A reason to get up when others stayed down. He dropped the cigarette, stepped on it, and started to leave. Before he walked out, he turned and said, "The world doesn't respect talkers, kid. It respects survivors." Those words hit harder than any punch I'd ever taken. After that night, I changed again. Training wasn't enough anymore. I needed to test myself. I found underground fights, small, dirty gyms where no one cared who you were or what your record said. No rules. No cameras. Just pain. The first fight, I almost didn't make it out. I was slow, rusty, uncertain. But when the guy hit me hard, something woke up inside. That same fire from the night I fell. It wasn't anger. It was clarity. I didn't need to win. I just needed to stand back up. So I did. Again and again. I took hits that would have ended me years ago, but I smiled through the blood. Because every punch was proof that I wasn't broken anymore. By the time it ended, my opponent couldn't stand. I didn't celebrate. Didn't raise my hands. I just looked down at him, nodded, and walked away. No crowd. No applause. Just silence. The same silence that built me. After that fight, word spread. People started to whisper again, "He's back." But I didn't care about words anymore. The ones who betrayed me could talk all they wanted. Because when the bell rings, talking stops. Months later I got a call. A real one. An official fight offer. A chance to step back into the ring, not as the loser they remembered but as the fighter I became. I looked at the name of my opponent, and froze. It was one of my old teammates. The same guy who laughed the night I lost. For a moment the old me wanted revenge. To prove them wrong. To make them hurt the way I did. But then I smiled. Because that wasn't who I was anymore. I didn't fight for revenge. I fought for redemption. The night of the fight, I stood in front of the mirror, The same one I used to stare at years ago, full of doubt. But this time I didn't see fear. I saw focus. The calm before a storm. Ray walked up, placed a hand on my shoulder and said quietly, "Don't fight to prove something. Fight to remember why you started." I nodded. Then I stepped toward the ring. The lights hit my face. The crowd roared. The smell of sweat, blood, and adrenaline filled the air. For a second I closed my eyes. And in that silence I remembered everything. The rain. The betrayal. The nights alone. The pain. All of it led here. As I walked to the center, my opponent smirked. He thought I was still that broken kid. The one who hesitated. The one who doubted himself. But when the bell rang, I moved like someone who had nothing left to lose. Every punch was years of silence exploding. Every hit I took was a reminder of how far I'd come. He hit me hard, but I didn't fall. He shouted, cursed, tried to break me. But you can't break someone who's already rebuilt himself from dust. Round after round, I didn't hear the crowd. Didn't hear the announcer. Just my heartbeat, steady, calm, unshaken. And when he finally dropped to his knees, gasping for breath, I didn't smile. Didn't taunt. I just stood there, breathing heavily, staring down at him. Because that was the moment I realized. I didn't come to win. I came to end the old story. When the bell rang and the ref raised my hand, the crowd screamed my name. But inside I was silent. Not because I didn't care, but because I didn't need to speak anymore. Pain had spoken for me. Discipline had built me. And silence had made me unstoppable. That night, when I walked out of the arena, the rain started to fall again. Only this time I didn't hide from it. I let it wash over me, washing away the blood, the fear, the past. Because I wasn't the same fighter who fell years ago. I was something else. A reminder that sometimes the loudest man in the room means nothing. And the quietest one? He's already won. The night after the fight, I didn't celebrate. There were no parties, no cameras, no noise. Just the sound of my footsteps echoing down an empty street. The city was quiet. Too quiet for a man who had just won his biggest battle. But maybe that was the point. Because for the first time in my life, I didn't need anyone to clap for me. Silence was the only applause I wanted. I walked past the same gym where everything started. The lights were off, but the memories weren't. Through the window I could still see flashes of my past. A young kid with bright eyes and shaky hands, dreaming of glory. He didn't know that glory comes with a price. I stood there for a long time. Looking at that door, I realized something. The kid who walked in years ago never made it out. The man standing here was someone else entirely. Ray's words from before the fight still echoed in my mind. Don't fight to prove something. Fight to remember why you started. So I asked myself, why did I start? Not for fame. Not for revenge. Not even for victory. I started because fighting was the only way I ever felt alive. That night I went back to my garage, my silent temple. The punching bag still hung there, torn and scarred just like me. The floor was stained with old blood, but to me it looked like history. I touched the bag once and memories flooded in. Every fall, every betrayal, every night I thought about giving up. I whispered to myself, "You made it." But then another thought hit me. Made it where? Success wasn't the end. It was just another beginning. Days passed. People reached out, old friends, reporters, sponsors. They wanted interviews, endorsements, headlines. They wanted the story of the fighter who rose from nothing. But they didn't want the truth. Because the truth isn't pretty. The truth is blood, doubt, loneliness, and silence. And no one wants to hear that. So I stayed quiet. I refused every interview. Because what built me wasn't meant for entertainment, it was survival. One afternoon, Ray found me again sitting on the gym steps, staring at the floor. He sat beside me, cracked open a can of cheap beer, and said, "You did it, kid. You shut everyone up." I smirked. Maybe. But it's not about them anymore. He nodded slowly. Good. Because the fight was never about proving them wrong. It was about proving you right. We sat in silence for a while, watching the sunset fade behind the buildings. It felt strange, peace. I'd spent so long chasing pain that I'd forgotten what calm felt like. Later that night, I went for a run, same route as years ago. The rain started again like it always did in moments that mattered. Only this time, I didn't see it as punishment. It felt like cleansing, washing away everything that didn't belong anymore. My legs moved automatically, my breathing steady, my mind quiet. Every step echoed one truth. The man who needs to scream his worth will always stay lost. The one who can stay silent in his strength, he's already found himself. The world began to notice. Clips of my fight went viral. People called me the silent fighter. The name stuck not because I talked less, but because my story said everything my mouth never had to. I became a symbol. Not of victory, but of endurance. Of rising without rage. Of surviving without noise. But fame didn't change me. I still trained alone. Still kept the same torn gloves, the same broken bag, the same routine. Because I knew, the second I forgot where I came from, I'd lose who I became. Months later, I got invited to speak at a youth boxing camp, the same kind I could never afford as a kid. At first, I wanted to say no. What could I possibly tell them? That pain was a gift? That loneliness builds strength? That the world will break you before it ever respects you? But I went anyway. When I walked in, the kids stared like they were seeing a ghost. Some recognized me. Some didn't. They just saw a man with scars who didn't smile much. I didn't give a long speech. I just said, everyone wants to fight when the lights are on. But the real battle happens in the dark, when no one's watching. Win there and you'll win anywhere. The room was quiet. No claps. No cheers. Just that silence again, the one that used to hurt but now healed. That night, I went home and finally allowed myself to rest. Not just my body, my soul. For years, I thought strength meant never stopping. But sometimes, strength is being able to pause and say, I'm still here. I looked around my garage one last time. The rusted weights, the cracked floor, the quiet that had once been my only friend. And I realized, this place didn't break me. It built me. A few weeks later, I got another call, a rematch offer. Big stage. Huge money. But I said no. Because I didn't need to fight anymore. The ring gave me everything it could. Now it was time to live. So instead, I opened that same old gym again. Not to make champions, but to build survivors. Kids who'd been laughed at. Men who'd been broken. People who thought silence meant weakness. I taught them what silence really meant. Focus. Resilience. Power without noise. Years passed. My name became a story people told, not a person they saw. But that's okay. Because legends don't talk, they leave echoes. Sometimes I walk into the gym late at night when everyone's gone. The sound of the bags, the smell of sweat, it takes me back. I shadowbox under the dim light, slow, controlled, silent. And I smile, not because I'm happy, but because I finally understand what peace feels like. If you asked me now what I've learned after all these years, I'd tell you this. Success isn't about noise. It's not about proving anyone wrong. It's about mastering yourself so completely that even when the world screams, you stay still. Because real power doesn't shout. It breathes. It waits. It endures. And when it finally moves, it doesn't need an audience. I was born in pain, built in silence, forged by betrayal, and reborn in peace. That's my story. Not of a champion, not of revenge, but of a man who finally learned how to fight without hate and live without noise.